Greetings, this is Storyteller Mitch, starting a new book, a short one called The Night Walker, and it's by Robert Bloch. He's the same fellow who wrote Psycho. Apparently there's a movie about this. I've never seen it. I'll look it up later, probably. Okay. Dream. What are dreams? What do they mean? Throughout the ages, mankind has wandered about the secret world we enter when we sleep. All we know is that nightmares come true to everyone. Did you ever have a dream like this? In the darkness of the master bedroom, Howard Trent paused, his sightless eyes fixed on a point he could never see. His blocky body leaned heavily on the thick white cane held like a weapon in his right hand. The room was a sea of hostility. He felt alien and alone in his own home. He moved toward the bed, the white cane tapping on the ludicrous parquet flooring. The white blur of his angry face caught the pale wash of moonlight entering through the half-open drapes. Was a mask, the face of a blind man. There was no expression in his eyes, only the slash of mouth was cruel. The room was high-ceilinged, oddly old-fashioned, with its dark wood and massively baroque furniture. Howard Trent knew the exact location and position of everything in that room, including the large square bed, the bed where his wife was now sleeping. He could hear the tiny sounds of her being as they emanated subtly from the direction of the west wall. Tap, tap, tap. The cane silenced itself on the circular rug to the left of the bed, and he knew where he was. Before the nightstand windows just to the left, and behind him below the sleeping woman that his world knew as Irene Trent. Only the world didn't know everything. The world didn't know that Irene Trent dreamed nightly of a lover, a passionate, erotic lover who? Irene was dreaming now. He sensed her turning over on her side, heard the sleepy, pleasurable murmurs muffling the pillow he remembered her hugging when he had eyes to see her and enjoy her himself. Now there was only the torment of memory and the unfulfilled desire. He bent over the bed, balancing himself on the cane, to catch the words, to have his ears credit the dark and ugly suspicion which had tortured his days and nights these last 2 months. "Oh, darling, hold me." There it was, the damning words again. "Hold me close, darling. I love you." Howard Trent's hand vised on the head of the cane. "Please, I need you. Don't ever leave me." He raised the cane, wanting to smash her, kill her. He was trembling. The words whispered out lazily, engulfing him, driving nails into his flesh. "Of course, darling. Yes, yes, yes." He turned away, resting all his shaking weight on the length of the cane. Pounding sea of noise filled his head, roaring, throbbing. She had stopped talking now. Only her ecstatic sighing echoed and re-echoed, dimly from far off. He heard a bell tinkling faintly. He strained to get control of himself, forgetting the infidelity in his bed. He had a visitor, of course. His cane met the parquet floor again. It thumped hollowly as he left the bedroom. He closed the door softly. Feeling his way surely down the corridor to the main landing which led down to the floor level, he was smiling a ghastly smile. The gloom of the house seemed to disintegrate with the force of his smile. Why not? It gave a blind man a wonderful sense of superiority to meet the very man he was certain his faithless wife was dreaming of nightly. He would show them all he wanted as blind as all that. He would show them all he wasn't as blind as all that. "Good evening, Barry. A little brandy?" Howard Trent crossed briskly from the doorway to the study. He bore down swiftly on the portable bar set between the 6-tier bookcase and the southeastern corner of the room. The cane did not deter his quick progress. "No thanks," Barry Moreland said quietly, raising his feet from the cocoa-colored lounge to the right of the mahogany glass top desk. It was always a trifle unnerving to see Howard Trent, knowing he couldn't see you, yet being completely convinced he could somehow see better than you. "I'm on the wagon these days, too many complicated legal matters that call for nothing but clear head." "I see. I'm sure you do, better than most people I know." He watched Howard Trent carefully and with no loss of speed pour himself a scotch on the rocks into the right-sized glass. Waiting, Barry permitted himself a quick survey of the Trent study. The place always fascinated him. A pleasantly large enough room, massive brown furnishings like the bookcase, the bar, and the desk. A real touch of the last century and yet ultra-modern in terms of keeping up with the Parvenus. There were 3 rows of wall shelving stacked with phonograph records and related equipment. These were currently arranged about an enormous stereo set which fed to the tall stereophonic speakers, mounted on the thin poles of the one far corner of the study. "I could have poured that for you," Barry said. "I'm not helpless yet." The remark shot across the room with almost vicious speed. Then Howard Trent smiled a blind smile and moved in the wake of the retort. He walked easily to within a yard of his collar. "What do you like, Barry?" "What do you mean?" Howard was staring at him, his sightless eyes target on him. "You're quite tall, I'd say about 6 feet, blue eyes, black hair, good-looking, very attractive to women, am I right?" Barry Moreland was a modest man, but the description was too accurate for comfort. "Is that why it was so important to see me tonight?" he demanded, a trifle impatiently. Howard held up a hand, smiling grimly. "You forget I'm not able to see you." "I'm sorry. So am I. That's the reason I asked you the question." Barry frowned. "What are you getting at?" "Sit down." It was a soft command. Howard had crossed a huge stereo set. Barry watched him, puzzled. Trent obviously had something on his hand. He was still talking. "You're quite a romantic fellow, Barry. You'll probably appreciate this." "Appreciate what?" "Listen." With nimble fingers, Howard had selected a few buttons to set up a playback. Suddenly, with startling clarity of the tone, a woman's voice issued from the judiciously placed speakers. Where are you, darling? Where are you, darling? I know you're near me. Touch me. Let me feel your hands. I see you wherever I go. Oh, I need you so. Darling, I love you. Don't ever leave me." The woman's voice belonged to Irene Trent. Howard did not turn the playback off. The low ecstasy-laden words of passion and passion's response filtered through the room. Howard's blind eyes showed nothing. "I've had to create a new world for myself, Barry. A world of sounds." "That's Irene's voice. I'm sure you recognize it." Barry nodded, still listening. "Sounds as if she were talking in her sleep." "Exactly." Howard snapped a button suddenly, and Irene's voice stilled. The playback shut down. "I hid the tape recorder in the bedroom. I recorded everything on tape. Our conversation just now, for example. Would you like to hear a sample?" "No, thank you. I know how I sound, and I'll take your word for it." There was an awkward silence between them. Barry didn't know what to say, but Howard Trent did. "It's quite touching, isn't it? I wonder who my wife could be dreaming of." He stared at Barry as if he were seeing him. "Someone quite tall, about 6 feet, blue eyes, good-looking, attractive to women? Do you think I'm right, Barry?" For all his customary authoritative manner, Barry Moreland felt hamstrung. "Has it ever occurred to you that she's just dreaming?" "The same dream?" Howard's scorn was solid. "Night after night?" Barry didn't answer, and Howard returned to the bar, smiling obliquely. "Have a drink with me, Barry." He poured 2 this time, just as expertly and just as quickly as before. He walked back to Barry, handing him a glass. Moreland took it. "To your health, and mine." Neither of them was aware of the slight inward angle of the study door. Irene Trent, a silken bathrobe wound tightly about her slim, shapely figure, was stealthily listening. She was standing in the shadows, every nerve and muscle of her body tense, waiting. "I think my wife's having an affair with another man," Howard Trent said without malice. "But that's not possible. How could there be any other man? Irene never leaves this house." "Then it must be someone who comes here." Irene Trent eased the study door closed and moved quietly back to the shadows. Barry was shaking his head, his lawyer's mind weighing evidence and facts. "You don't entertain, Mr. Trent. You don't have visitors. Nobody comes here except, of course—" "Go on, Barry." "Now wait a minute, Mr. Trent," Barry blustered. He felt a flush before this blind man who he kept reminding himself cannot see. "I scarcely know your wife. I've only seen her a very few times." And, you seem to know her well enough. You called her by her first name a short while ago. All I really know about Mrs. Trent, Barry said emphatically, is that she happens to be a wonderful woman who is dedicated to your welfare. Appears to be a lawyer's phrase that. You've just heard what I hear night after night. Is she just dreaming, or is there another man? We must be sure, mustn't we, Barry? Howard had drained his drink, his rapacity the only visible sign of anguish at work within. He shrugged now and moved to the doorway, opening the barrier. Barry sprang awkwardly forward. Mr. Trent, I don't know what to say to you. I'm sure you're wrong. I realize you must be terribly upset, but I have work to do now, Barry. Important work, you understand? Dismissal. Here's your hat. There's the door. Barry restrained a sigh of defeat. He joined Howard Trent at the threshold. The blind man motioned him to the hallway, following deftly on his tapping white cane. The regular tickling of the many assorted clocks, which honeycombed the Trent mansion once more, sounded their evening symphony of sibilance. It was curious effect in the half-lighted hallways and corridors. Barry walked ahead of Howard, feeling uncomfortable, sensing the blind man's boring like spotlights into his unprotected back. The collective tickling of the unseen clocks was an eerie counterpoint to the tap-tap-tap of the white cane. You and I have no secrets, do we, Barry? I hope not, sir. You're not only my attorney, but my friend. I trust you, Barry, just as I do my wife. They had reached the head of the two stairways on the leading down the front door, the other spiraling on a short climb to the upper level. Howard's free hand restricted briefly on Barry's shoulder. See you soon, Barry. Just a figure of speech. Barry said good night. He walked as Howard Trent ascended the ornate circular staircase. The cane kept up tapping cadence in the time of the muffled halls of the blind man's shoes on the steps. There was a solid gray steel door visible at the head of the landing. It was set into the wall so that you knew it had been custom made. Howard Trent's workshop, a laboratory. He had eternally fussed with chemicals in his line of business. It had cost him his eyesight in one short ugly accident, a gas explosion. Barry remembered the accident now, seeing Howard pause at the steel door, fishing a large brass key from the folds of his smoking jacket. The steel door clanged shut with a hollow metallic ring. Barry shook his head, unable to disentangle the mental quirks and deviations in Trent's blind man's brain. He started down the stairs, careful of the gloom of the hallway. Yet the clocks fascinated him once more. He was fascinated about many things in the Trent household. The clocks were in a class by themselves, sort of a horologist's Disneyland. The walls were saturated, stuffed, and bulging with clocks, every kind of time-telling device the mind could conceive. Their ticking unity served only to make you notice them still more. There was the stately hall clock, of course, a grandfather beauty at least 7 feet high, and a wall clock with a similar face, but a sweeping pendulum to make it singular. A cuckoo clock and a very ornate French clock were mounted side by side in the foyer, matching sounds. The gilded doves and cupids seemed to fly with rhythmically ticking indicators. An extremely plain naval chronometer held a position close to the landing. Surrounding it on all sides were the clocks of the luminous dial faces. Clocks with dots instead of numerals. Clocks around the triangular square and egg-shaped. It was a world of clocks. And its only movement was the swing up and swing down, swing left, swing right, and the pendulums. The only sound was the universal tick-tick-ticking of time as it walked softly back into the past. Yesterday. History. Howard Trent was rich. Howard Trent was blind. Howard Trent was clock-happy. Howard Trent was jealous of his wife. What else was Howard Trent? Barely Moreland shook off more than a vague feeling of uneasiness and padded quickly toward the front door. The house was lit by the table lamps and standing lamps too, another fetish of Howard Trent's. The man had a million of them, but he was Barry Moreland's most profitable exercise and personal attorney to the estate of. Grotesque shadows, fashioned by the lamps, threw themselves along the high walls, reaching for Barry as he placed his hand on the knob of the front door. Barry! He stopped and turned his eyes searching the gloom. He saw the figure of a slender man poised in a doorway across the hall, a light behind her leaving her face in the darkness, yet he knew who it was. "In here!" Irene Trent whispered fiercely. "I must talk to you." The clocks took the words and set them to music with furious, frenetic energy. Barely Moreland moved to the doorway.